Welcome and good evening. Uh, Vikram is a multi-potentialite. He has woven many diverse subjects like astrology, education, business, data sciences, and Vedic studies together to create a kind of a rare offering as a Vedic life coach with over 23 years of experience. What sets Vikram actually apart is his approach. He combines Indian philosophy, astronomy, Indian mythology with coaching at its core, using birth chart as a tool to help people achieve their goals, rather than using astrology purely for prediction purpose, as it's more commonly done these days. Carrying deep reverence and humility for these vast subjects, he shares his learnings and understanding through long-term programs, courses, workshops, retreats, and sessions. The core essence of his work is deeply rooted in self-work and self-growth, which is constantly shedding light on how one can view astrology in the bigger and wider context of Vedic thought. Today's talk is actually one of the many such offerings in this direction, as Vikram shares with us his views on Vedic astrology in the light of Sri Aurobindo. Vikram is long-time Aurovillian. He holds a PhD in Vedic astrology and a gold medalist in data science from Indian School of Business.
Let's begin with a small grounding. Yeah. So if we can turn off our phones, make ourselves available for the next hour or so. I've put my phone on silent mode. So find your feet on the floor. See if your back is straight. If you're comfortable, you can close your eyes and bring your attention to your breath. And just become aware of how you're breathing today. How fast or slow you're breathing. How deep or shallow is your breath? If your mind wanders, bring it back to the breath. And now see if you can make your breathing a little slower, a little longer. Till you find the pause in between the breath. Let's synchronize our breathing now. I'll tell you what I'm doing. See if you can follow along. I'm breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in with my nose, letting go with my mouth. One more time, breathing in and releasing. Come back to normal breathing. Let's take a moment to connect with the intention for being present here today. Why are we here? What is it we would like to hear or learn? And with that intention in mind, let's say a small prayer, silently in our own words, calling upon the highest, the most divine, the most spiritual to come and be with us, to guide us, to protect us, and to show us the way. Slowly come back to your breath. Become aware of where you're seated. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, so Vedic astrology in the light of integral yoga. I've actually broken this down into 3 different categories that I want to cover today. So I want to do this in 3 categories. The first being astrology as a framework for understanding, practicing, living integral yoga. Yeah. The second is integral yoga as a basis for practicing astrology. Yeah, I'm reversing it. And the third, which is my very recent discovery, is Sri Aurobindo as a source for astrological truths. Yeah. I want to start with astrology as a framework, but before we go here, before we do astrology as a framework for integral yoga, we need to understand what integral yoga is. Right? So let me give you my version of this vast knowledge. Right? I think you'll get as many explanations and definitions of integral yoga as people you ask. So I'm going to share with you how I have understood it. The first, in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, he puts the psychic being at the center, right? We've heard that term a lot, right? What he calls as the Chaitya Purusha, the soul in the individual. And for me, integral yoga is the journey of this soul. It's the journey of soul in evolution. And he lays down many conditions or many criteria, many prerequisites for this soul to evolve. Rejection, aspiration, concentration, surrender, all of it. But the individual will, the individual is very important, right? And Sri Aurobindo acknowledges that the transformation has to happen at that individual level. He takes everything that the Vedas have provided, right? So for instance, he acknowledges the importance of Hatha Yoga, what we know as asana, as pranayama, in order to transform the physical body, in order to transform physical consciousness. It's extremely important. He acknowledges that. He also acknowledges the 3 different yogas that the Gita speaks about. So we have, for instance, the path of knowledge, which is Jnana Yoga, right? Raja Yoga, perfecting the mental, right? Or using the mental processes in order to evolve, right? He acknowledges the importance of Bhakti Yoga, devotion. It's a very big part of his sadhana, right? Of what he recommends. He also acknowledges the path of works, what we call as Karma Yoga. This is taken from the Vedas, from the Upanishads, from the Gita. He acknowledges that all this is important for eventual liberation, but he says this is not enough. And that is what makes integral yoga so interesting for me. Yeah? What does he say? The first, he lays down 3 conditions. Well, before we come to the conditions, he says if we practice all of this, if we achieve samadhi, if we attain moksha, great, you will escape the cycle of birth and death. You will escape reincarnation. But what happens to life on earth? What is the point of escaping, of going beyond, if everybody else continues in the same, right? For him, it is all about collective sadhana. It is a collective evolution. It is taking everybody, all life on earth, transforming everything on earth into something much different. And for that to happen, he lays down 3 conditions. Yeah? First, he says individual perfection. The individual must become perfect. Perfect in what? Must become a perfect instrument for the divine to work through this person. In terms of speech, in terms of mind, in terms of thought, in terms of action, an empty channel, an empty vessel where the divine works through you. It is an ultimate perfection. What he calls as divinization of the being. The whole self becomes divinized in order to become a channel for something higher, for something greater than us. This is the first condition. He doesn't stop there. He says, yes, you have divinized your whole life. The divine is working through you. One more condition. The second condition is you need to see everybody else as divine. You need to consider everybody else as also on the path, and you need to see the inherent divinity in everyone. What he calls as a oneness with all life. This is the second condition. It doesn't stop there. He says, if you are perfect, a perfect channel, and you're considering everybody else as divine, and if there are a few such individuals, what he calls as the rise of the Gnostic consciousness, a few individuals, the whole human life, there will be a radical transformation, an inner transformation.
Okay,
a change in total life because of a radical inner transformation, if the first 2 conditions are met. Where we are guided by a higher truth rather than by ego and conflict. And for me, this is the purpose of Auroville, right? Where we are guided by a higher truth, not just in thinking, not just in words, in action as well. But for this, all the other has to also happen. Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Hatha Yoga. He is synthesizing all of that. And he is saying, don't consider only one. You need to take all. And don't stop at that. You need to perfect your instrument to be a vehicle for the divine, to be an instrument for the divine. Consider everybody else as one with the divine. And then there will be a radical inner transformation. It is not sequential. You can start wherever you are, but it's about synthesizing all these different yogas is what I understand he's asking. But he doesn't stop there. He says, as we do this, there will be an ascent. There is an ascent into the higher planes of mind, what he calls as the higher mind, where logic breaks down, where we surpass logic. And then we go to the illumined mind, where you're able to see, perceive visions of the truth. The intuitive mind, where everything is instantaneous. You can see the truth in an instant. You go beyond that into an overmind, the plane of the gods. And beyond that is the supermind. There is an ascent, but it is not one after the other. It all happens in parallel. As we perfect our being, as we work on our aspiration, as we surrender, there is an ascent. And with that ascent, there is also a descent of the supermind. something from a very, very high plane descends layer by layer till it penetrates all of physical matter. And the thing is, the mother and Sri Aurobindo have already brought down the supermind, and it is present over here. But if we can perfect our beings with everything else that I just shared, we can sense the workings of the supermind. Yeah? When this happens, an ascent and a descent, you know that upward triangle and the downward triangle in Sri Aurobindo's symbol is basically representing this for me, the ascent and the descent. He says life will change. There will be a completely new world, a completely new humanity. The view changes. That's what struck me. The view changes, right? Now, whatever I'm sharing over here, it's all copy paste. Yeah? I've not changed any of these words as long as there are inverted commas. If you don't see inverted commas, then it's my own words, right? And I've also given the sources. So very happy if you can see the context in which he has written this, the before and the after. Now, when this supermind comes down, it's a completely new cycle. Yeah? It's a new world, it's a new life. Yeah, it's a new life on Earth. This for me is a very broad summary of integral yoga in 10 minutes. Yeah. Why am I sharing this? I came across these two quotes, which really took me by surprise. The first one, supermind starts from a unity and not a division. And for those who are studying with me, for me, this somewhere I'm linking it to ether, right? The base on which everything else manifests, right? Different terminology, but supermind starts from unity. The other quote, and this I got it from a video series called Evolution Fast Forward. They say supermind first creates the world of pure archetypes. This was very interesting for me because for me, astrology is all about archetypes. But the archetypes that the supermind creates are different from the astrological archetypes, right? For me, the archetypes of the supermind are more like qualities of the mother. Right? Think of that as the supreme manifestation, the first expression of the supermind are the qualities of the mother, right? The 12 qualities. But the astrological archetypes come a step lower, right? They are at the part of the overmind. But before we go there, let me just again summarize what I have just shared, because this is super important. Yeah? First, it's a little small, but I'm trying to condense it. Aspiration, rejection, concentration, and surrender by the individual. This is the crux. This is the core. This is the start of integral yoga, right? And then what he does, Sri Aurobindo, he gives a lot of importance to Hatha Yoga, transforming physical consciousness with asana and pranayama. He says Jnana Yoga is very important. Raja Yoga is very important. Perfect the mental. He talks about the path of love, bhakti yoga, devotion, aspiration, converting all desires into an aspiration for the divine. He talks about the path of works, karma yoga, what we generally know as offering all our actions to the divine. This is what I knew of Vedic knowledge before I came to Auroville till here. But the conditions he gave, perfection of the individual in order to be an instrument for the divine. Every word, every step, every thought, can it be a consecration for the divine? Can I let the divine act through me? Perfection of the individual. Oneness with all, right? can I regard everybody as being equally divine? Right? Which leads to a complete, radical inner transformation of all life on earth, with just a few Gnostic individuals or something he says to that effect. Yeah? A few people can evolve, they'll change all of society. And then he speaks about the ascent to the supermind, a very huge climb and a descent of the supermind into all life on earth. And he says when this supermind descends, we will be free of suffering, we will be free of old age, we will be free of all kinds of ignorance and conflict. It will be a healing energy, which leads to a completely different view of life on earth. Yeah. So, I'll answer your question, but the reason I'm laughing is because I'm sure my students know what I have done over here. Right? You know what I have done over here. Yeah? Clearly, what I have done. This is the South Indian chart of the zodiac. Astrology as a framework to understand, practice integral yoga. It's easier to look at where Sri Aurobindo is coming from if you have something like guardrails, to hold on to, and you say, okay, fine, okay, he's talking about Jnana Yoga, which is Gemini. Okay, no, I need to work on my heart, on opening my heart. I need to open Cancer. I need to work on that aspect of my being. It's a way of approaching integral yoga. It is the start. The four yogas that we have, Hatha Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, it is the start of integral yoga. It is not the end. There are hints of perfection in the Gita, where Krishna says, whatever you do, do it for me. How much Sri Aurobindo has written about what he calls as the sacrifice comes under individual perfection. Can I be an instrument for the divine to act through me? That is just the start of integral yoga. Shall we continue? Yeah. Okay, so this was a framework for understanding integral yoga, astrology as a framework. Right? My next is integral yoga as a basis for practicing astrology. Yeah? Why this is not working? Okay. Before I came to Auroville, that was 22, 23 years ago, I studied astrology, and it was like this, the astrology that I studied. If Jupiter, Guru, right? If Jupiter is associated with a benefic, there will be gains of many varieties. Here's another one. If Rahu is in the 8th house, there will be all kinds of troubles. Very deterministic, all if-then statements. If this happens, then this will happen. Then I came to Auroville. Right? And one of the questions, I was teaching in future school at that time, I had to give a talk on astrology, and a student, Peter, right? He comes up to me and says, what does Sri Aurobindo say about astrology? Who's Sri Aurobindo? I didn't know Sri Aurobindo. I knew he was a freedom fighter, but what about astrology? I have no clue. So I start researching. The first thing that I find is where Sri Aurobindo says, even if the prediction were accurate according to the horoscope, by entering a spiritual life, one opens to a new force which can change one's destiny. This was a shocker, because I've come from an if-then paradigm. If this, then this. Nothing you can do. Gone case. That's it. And he doesn't stop. There is so much he has written about astrology. Here he says, destiny in the rigid sense applies only to the outer being. And when you enter a spiritual life for the sadhak, destiny recedes. Destiny. He's talking about fate. So I start researching fate. What has he said about fate and free will? He says, cases are seen in which the predictions of the horoscope fulfill themselves to great accuracy up till a certain age, and then apply no more. This happens when the subject turns away from the ordinary to the spiritual life. It does not follow that the stars rule our destiny. They only record a destiny. Yeah? Both fate and free will are recognized. Freedom and determination are only two sides of the same thing. This one? Yeah, he says many astrological predictions come true, quite a mass of them, if one takes all together. But it does not follow that the stars rule our destiny. The stars merely record a destiny. So I'm reading all of this, and I'm trying to understand how exactly does this work now. What about astrology? It's Vedic. Our astrology comes from the Vedas. There is a truth in them. But here is Sri Aurobindo saying the predictions need not come true. There is both fate and free will. If you speak to any traditional astrologer, they speak in terms of fate, destiny. This is written in your birth chart. This will happen. That's the paradigm they come from, right? But here, Sri Aurobindo is saying something completely different. So those who I have worked with will understand where I'm going with this. The analogy of crossing a river. This is the best way I can explain fate and free will. What does this say? Imagine you're crossing the river, right? What the birth chart does is to explain which direction is the river flowing. How deep are the currents? How strong are the currents? But the river does not say where you need to go. You have to decide where you have to go. You can say you want to go downstream, in which case you take the currents with you and you use the force of the currents to go further where you want to go. Or you can say you want to go upstream, in which case you have to go against the currents. But that is your choice. That is free will. But the fact that the river is flowing in a certain direction at that point, it's fate. Because you came there yourself. Now you're there. Now you find yourself in that part of the river. That's fate. You can't change that. What will you do now is in your control. Will you stay there? Will you build a boat to go upstream? Or will you let your vasanas run you? Vasanas, tendencies, innate nature in us, which is what the horoscope, the birth chart tells us about. It takes you with it. So what Sri Aurobindo is saying is, you can learn how to swim. That is entering the spiritual life. You learn how to swim and you navigate that river. So for me, integral yoga became the basis for practicing. How do I practice astrology? Do I predict a future? How can I? Because you can choose to go against the river. I can only tell you what your currents are in life, how fast, strong that river is flowing. Now, if you say you want to build a boat and go upstream, what does that boat look like? I take it from integral yoga. If we find that Saturn and Earth signs are strong in the chart, then these are the practices from integral yoga. Develop discipline, purify yourself. If Mercury and the air signs are strong, then meditation and detachment becomes a remedy. If Jupiter and the fire, water signs are strong, then aspiration and surrender becomes the remedy. But this is just an example of how we can use integral yoga to build that boat and go against the river. Right? Now, one of the questions I get is, why should I go against the river? Let me go with the flow of life. What if you are an addict? What if you are an alcoholic? Do you want to go with the flow of life? You'll pick up that other drink. Or do you want to go against your natural tendencies? You want to swim against the river. One of the things that Sri Aurobindo talks about a lot is rejection. Yeah, the three things he says: aspiration, rejection, and surrender. Three things are essential for this sadhana. Rejection of what? He gives a big paragraph. Rejection of ideas, constructions, free room, whatever, demands, desires, selfishness, envy, hostility, joy. What do I do when I see a big list like this? I make the South Indian chart. And I take each word and I put it into the right box. And it becomes so easy to say, this is what Sri Aurobindo is talking about. Another way to say the same thing, this is the shadow of these signs. So if it is a certain sign activated in a person's chart, just go there and see, this is the shadow that that person has to work with immediately. Right? Now, I'm not saying this is the correct mapping. Feel free to play with it. But it becomes so easy to work with a voluminous work, right? If you're able to map it to something that you understand. I want to take a small pause, ask questions if you have. So these are the signs of the zodiac. They're different from the houses. So in this case, I have mapped all the things Sri Aurobindo has asked us to reject into the signs. You can do the same with the houses, possible, but I did not find a clear mapping. The houses, your question is, which is the starting point? Which is the first house? Yeah. So your personality is determined by all the planets. right? All the planets, all the signs, all the houses. So when we look at a chart, we see what is taking the focus in that time, right? By multiple factors. Say you can look at the running dasha, you can look at transits, you can look at aspects, you can look at which is a strong planet in your chart. So that is about judging the horoscope. We can't say it is only the sun sign or only the moon sign. It's very general then. But here, I'm not looking at an individual's chart. So this, for instance, I keep with me when I go into a session. Because the moment I start speaking about a sign, I know what Sri Aurobindo has said about that sign. I mean, he's not spoken about the sign, but the shadows that can manifest where that sign gets activated. Okay. He saw astrology as a framework for understanding. Integral yoga, understanding is a wrong word. It's practicing, living it. Integral yoga as the basis for practicing astrology. Sri Aurobindo as the basis for, as a source for astrological truths. That's what we are going into. This for me started when I read this this was one of the first books I read about Sri Aurobindo, the mother, what he has written about the mother. He says, that which we call nature or prakriti is only her most outward executive aspect. And then he goes on to speak about the 4 powers of the mother through whom she acts. And all thanks to Sandira for bringing this to my attention. The 4 powers of the mother, he speaks about Mahakali. And look at the words he has used. Force and strength. She never shrinks from battle. Her vision and will are high. She acts with passionate kindness. She has the noblest aims and the largest vistas. It's describing Mahakali at another level altogether. But he describes all the other 3 Shaktis. Mahasaraswati, the most skillful, science and craft and technique. She's a builder and organizer. She's an administrator, a technician, laborious, persistent, integral. She is long suffering with 1,000 imperfections because she wants a perfect perfection. Maheshwari, she is above the thinking mind. She is mighty and wise, miraculous knowledge. All wisdom is in her. She is not partial. She is full of wisdom, luminous mind, attached to nothing. The truth of things and knowledge is the center of power. What am I doing here? Why have I highlighted these words? The last one, Mahalakshmi, attractive to the heart, joy and longing, intoxicating sweetness, grace and charm, bliss, harmony and beauty, love and beauty, poem of delight, intuition and devotion. Any guesses what's happening here? Planets? He has described the 4 Shaktis of the mother, right? We have Mahakali, Mahasaraswati, Maheshwari, and Mahalakshmi. We know these deities, right? From our culture, we know these deities. But the way Sri Aurobindo has described them together and the words he has used are the 4 elements. Right? Fire, earth, air, and water. If I want to understand what a particular element, these are the Mahatattvas, right? If I want to understand a particular element, there is no greater description of that element than Sri Aurobindo. It is the epitome of what that element can aspire for. It is the deity. And these are the signs. Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, Gem. These are the signs associated with the elements. These elements become the building blocks for these signs. He has not stated that Mahakali is fire, but I can't avoid looking at that similarity of the two. Yeah. When you look at the words, it's so distinctly these four elements. But he's gone much further. You know, when I compiled the writings of astrology by Sri Aurobindo, it came up to 130 pages. He has written that much. He has spoken about each of the planets and what that planet represents in his sadhana. And he calls it the Vedantic psychological explanation of the influence of planets. For instance, he says Venus is Jivatma, Shani is the body's power of activity in the outer world. Shani is Saturn. Rahu, the bitter nodes of life, this is the north node. Ketu, analogy, observation, and faith is determined by Ketu, Ketu's placement in the chart. But he doesn't stop there. You know, one of the things that we are struggling with at the moment in my classes, each software, it gives aspects to a different extent. There's something called aspects in astrology. You know, you have conjunction, opposition, trine, square. We have different aspects. Every software is calculating aspects differently. So we are trying to get to the root of this. What sutra, which classical work does this software take this aspect from? We are not able to find it. And then I find Sri Aurobindo has written on aspects. He says, Brihaspati, Jupiter, looking at a planet in the 5th and 9th house, these are the special aspects of Jupiter. Mangal, Mars, when looking at a planet in the 4th or 8th, special aspects of Mars. Shani, Saturn, looking at a planet in the 3rd or 10th. 3 and 10 are special aspects of Saturn. He goes on to speak about all have otherwise a full aspect when in opposition, 3/4 aspect. This is so technical. This is just hardcore astrology. And this helps me understand which software to consider now. I'm going to take this paragraph. He says there is no aspect on the 2nd, 6th, and 11th houses from a planet. He wrote many letters to his wife, early 1900s. And he said character can also be indicated from the horoscope much more completely and satisfactorily than the events of life. But this was before he said, once you enter a spiritual life, predictions won't come true. So he's already sensing that over here. Right? Look at character from the horoscope. Don't predict events of life. He says if your horoscope cannot be found, the exact time of birth will do, but it must be correct to the minute. So he's talking about accuracy in birth time. He has written an extensive critique of a very important astrological scripture we have called Kala Prakashika, a very favorable critique. And he says, I believe it would be found that a case exists in favor of astrology. I have found its truth attested in my deepest experience. So, what we have seen is astrology as a framework for integral yoga. Integral yoga is the basis for practicing astrology, and Sri Aurobindo as a source for astrological truths.